I'm the dad of a young man who struggles with substance use, and I'm also a person who's recovering out loud. I'm so grateful for you, Paul, to be here to celebrate this day with us. We have some wonderful speakers. Hey, Chris, nice to see you. We have some wonderful speakers. We're going to share a few words with you. So I wanted to tell you a quick story. Local author took a trip to Mount Tom. And as he looked from the mountain out to the valley, he saw this mill town with people who were struggling but refused to be defeated. With people whose spirit overcame all the difficulties in their life. And while they seemed anonymous to the rest of the world, people might have wondered, who are these people? To him, they were something really special. And so he stood there atop of Mount Trumpet, and he looked out into Whoville, and he wrote a story you might have heard, called The Grinch Who Stole Christmas. I feel much the same way about it. This is an incredible population of people, of families, of people who struggle and people who succeed, of people who refuse to be defeated. Nestled right here in the center of Western Massachusetts, it just seemed like a perfect spot for Learn to Cope West to open. So I'm grateful to be here. I'm so grateful to the mayor, to Will, who owns this building, for welcoming us in, for allowing us to be part of this incredible town, this incredible municipality, this incredible population, this incredible community. And since we've gotten here, I've so much felt like a part of this community. So I want to welcome you all to this community, and I want to welcome you to Hopeville.
My first exposure to Learn to Cope came after an experience in our home with my son and his involvement with substance use.
I have a loved one that struggled with addiction.
We'd been struggling with our daughter for a number of years. She started to get involved in drugs and alcohol, and that led to an opioid use disorder.
Our oldest daughter, Katie, was suffering from a very acute substance use disorder.
Our son was struggling, and we didn't know anything about the disease of addiction.
And we were, frankly, we were panicking.
You just are at a loss of what to do.
We were at a loss at what to do.
Learn to Cope is a family support network.
What we offer is a sense of hope, but also we offer resources, we offer education, we offer Narcan training.
Let's just say, like, pre-Learn to Cope, it was kind of like horrific problem. What did I do wrong? You need to stop it. I need to fix it, right? It's very linear. It's very parental.
With substance use disorder, your natural instincts are opposite of what you actually need to do to help a child or a loved one.
I started Learn to Cope because I needed it myself, having family members that have had substance use disorder and losing family members that have had substance use disorder.
One of the things that really impacted me about this idea of Learn to Cope was that it was not about dealing with addiction for the individual who was suffering from addiction, but rather was the involvement of the family and the loved ones.
The first time I walked into a Learn to Cope meeting, I pretty much knew right away I had found my home.
When we first started going to meetings, our lives at home were unmanageable. Our daughter's life was unmanageable. It was the one place where we could go and not feel alone, know that there's other people going through what we are going through. Just having that support of people that understand what it's like to have a loved one suffering.
People in the room knew where we were coming from. They had been where we'd been.
In Learn to Cope, I found people that understand me and that I understand. People that have helped me and people that I can help. That's what it's all about at Learn to Cope.
To me, I would not want to be anywhere else. There's something so amazing about being part of this family.
As of today, Learn to Cope has over 12,000 members, and it grows organically. It's not good news that there's such a need, but I'm glad we can be there to provide that for people.
Combating the opioid epidemic has been my top priority as Attorney General, and I had the opportunity back in 2015 to sit with Learn to Cope families, to hear their stories, and that really drove my passion for this and our office's work for this. Listening to them talk about what had happened to their loved ones is something that resulted in real and meaningful work, and I am so grateful for the work of Learn to Cope and for the families.
I was coming out of an event. I heard somebody behind me calling my name, and a woman came up to me and she handed me a Learn to Cope bracelet. And I said, hey, it's okay, I've already got one. And she said, no, you gave me this one when I asked you what I could do to help me deal with my daughter and her addiction a couple of years ago. And you gave me your bracelet and told me to call them and said that they could help. Well, my daughter's been sober now for over a year, and I've been waiting for a chance to find you so that I could give you back your bracelet so you could give it to somebody else, because it made a world of difference for me, for my daughter, and our family. That's why Learn to Cope is so special.
What made us think that Learn to Cope was the place we wanted to stay? It was the relatability. People were talking about their children and how they had gotten into opioids, and I honestly thought they were telling me my story. We looked at each other and we said, this is where we need to be.
Learn to Cope kind of opened my heart to things. I feel like somebody has my back.
Learn to Cope is the opposite of tough love.
Learn to Cope is hope and healing.
It has changed our lives for the better.
Learn to Cope was created by parents for families that are dealing with addiction and recovery.
And the effect that it has on all of us.
We are all here for the same reason.
Not to tell others what they should do,
but to share our experiences,
our wisdom,
strength,
resources,
and most importantly, hope.
You are not alone.
You are not alone.
There is hope.
No estás solo, hay esperanza.
Learn to Cope, as you may know, began in Taunton. And it really was the offshoot of an incredible group of women who called themselves the Porch Girls. And these were women whose families were being destroyed by substance use disorder. We're really glad, really fortunate to have our executive director, Joanne Peterson, who is one of the original. As well as another Porch Girl, Mary Duramo. So Learn to Cope started out there in Taunton and moved across the state until a woman I consider to be a visionary decided that it was time that Western Mass had the same provisions for resources, for support, for hope. And so I would like very much for you to help me welcome my dear friend and the founder of Learn to Cope in Western Mass, Marcia Jordan.
Thank you, everybody. It's so great to see everyone today, and I see new faces, and just to be here, I want to congratulate all of you. I mean, this is just amazing. And this is a very tough act to follow, so I promise Peter no more than 2 minutes, because there's lots of people here who have important things to say. So, you know, much like all of you, my family and I, my husband Michael and I, reached a point where we didn't really know where to turn. Our lives were turned upside down. We weren't sure what was going to happen to all of us, and so you know, we decided something had to give. And I won't go through the whole story, but I stumbled upon a reference to this group called Learn to Cope starting a meeting in the Worcester area. So that began our journey. On Thursday nights, Michael and I and our friend Mary Ellen would get in the car and drive to Worcester, and met lots of incredible people there. As I'm not going to repeat what I heard in the video, but it pretty much captured what we experienced as well. We knew that we had found a home, and we found people who understood us. And we're going to provide us with the resources, the information, the education, you know, the hope and the peer support that what we need. Joanne came up with the perfect recipe. She had the courage to do it. You know, I don't think too many people would have taken, you know, jumped in with both feet like you did, Joanne. You know, and none of this would be possible without this lady right over here. I'm not going to go through the whole story, but we met this wonderful couple from the Berkshires, and is Lorraine here? She's not here. So Lorraine and I teamed up and ganged up on Joanne and said, come on, can we bring this to Western Mass? You know, we all drive by that Raynham exit and then Taunton exit on our way to the Cape, and, you know, it just didn't seem possible, but we did with the help of wonderful people like D.A. Sullivan, who welcomed us. None of it would have been possible, and also our wonderful state representatives and state senators, and I turned to then Sheriff Ash, and Sheriff Kochi was wonderful to us, and my former boss, District Attorney Mark Mastriani, and of course the current DA. I mean, everybody helped us, but it was hard back then. Am I over my 2 minutes? It was hard back then because of the stigma. We all know what that feels like, right? And I have to say that, you know, that was 2011, so that was over 10 years ago already. And it's amazing to see how far we've come in terms of beating back stigma. But that is only because all of you have had the courage to open up about what's happened in your life, to normalize it, and to make people listen to you and accept you and not stigmatize you. So, I mean, it's so gratifying to see how far we've come, you know, as a group. But that's what it is. It's a group, and it's all about peer support, and it's also Recovery Month. And I don't want to forget that to get started, we had incredible help from people in recovery. They were our first speakers. They connected us to the people we needed to meet, and all those things. So I'm not going to go on and on because there's lots of people to speak after me, but I'm grateful to be here today, and congratulations. This is an incredible accomplishment. Thanks.
In order for a project like this to work, and in order for other projects similar, in order to be able to reach people and to assure that people get the resources and the help that they need, we need allies, we need warriors, we need champions, and our next speaker is somebody that I consider to be all of those. Would you please help me welcome Senator John Doris.
Good afternoon, everybody. What an absolute honor to be here today, and to follow my friend Marcy Julian. I've had the pleasure of knowing Marcy for years and years and years in a different capacity, and you're someone I've just always been very, very fond of, and someone who I always enjoy running into and catching up. So thank you for the gift. That's what this place is, a gift that you brought to Western Massachusetts. This is personal to me. As somebody who's in recovery, I remember, so I've got 5.5 years of sobriety right now. I remember when I was in early sobriety, and this network of people that fully embraced me. And what they said to me is, John, one of the things as you start to, if you stay with this thing, you're going to realize you start to get your life back. But you're also going to realize that, the people that we tend to hurt the most are the people who share the same last name as us. And that was my experience. And that was probably a lot of people's experience in this room. That peer support that you provide each other, that this is what I'm going through, what are you going through? It's a beautiful thing to witness. It's a beautiful thing to observe. I had the pleasure of actually sharing at a Learn to Cope meeting however many months ago. And I remember one of the most beautiful things in the world was hearing one family talk about something they were going through, I think with their daughter, and then having another family member say, hey, have you thought about doing this? And to me, it was just like a recovery meeting. You know, you're doing this, I'm doing this. There's no right way. We're all after the same thing. But again, the people we hurt the most are the people whose last names we share. So the creation of organizations like Learn to Cope are just such a remarkable thing, such a big part of this journey. I am so very humbled and honored to have you setting up in a community that I have the privilege of representing. Needless to say, I'll conclude where I began by saying this is an incredibly personal journey for me. I'm convinced that the way we treat recovery, it needs to be much more holistic than it is. And a big part of that is family members, friends. So thank you. And I forgot the one thing that I was really supposed to do. Things have to change. I have a citation, and I know my colleagues will be getting a citation. And usually it's the other way around. Usually I always am the one that you always have it, and I always don't have it. So I'm honored to present the citation. So the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, the State Senate, official citation, be it known that the Massachusetts Senate hereby extends its congratulations to Learn to Cope in recognition of the grand opening of your Easthampton Family Center with gratitude for your dedication to support families and individuals affected by addiction. Be it further known that the Massachusetts Senate extends its best wishes for continued success, that the citation be duly signed by the President of the Senate and attested to in a copy thereof transmitted by the Clerk of the Senate, signed by the President of the Senate, Karen Stolka, attested to by the Clerk of the Senate, Michael Hurley, and offered by Easthampton State Senator John Gillis. This is for everybody. Congratulations.
It's so nice to get a citation that doesn't have an order. We have 3 chairs up here. Hi, Rob. We have 3 chairs up here. Please, somebody come up and take it. Hey, hola. This morning when I woke up and it was pouring rain and the thunder was so loud that it made my dog collapse, I thought about, oh my God, what a terrible day it is. And then I remembered that I don't live on an island. And I don't have to worry about the electric grid cutting out. I don't have to worry that in spite of the fact that we're getting pummeled with rain, we have no water, that all of our crops are being destroyed, and that our roads are deteriorating under our feet. Magda, I love you. Eddie, I love you.
Love you too, brother.
I'm, of course, speaking of the island of Puerto Rico. If there's any way that you can help, we have a jar up front that we're collecting donations in. It's been 5 years since Maria, and they still have blue tarps on almost all of the roofs. You know? Without getting political, I really pray that this particular administration handles things the right way. So with this, I'd like to welcome another one of our heroes, our local state representative, Dan Carey.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Great to see everybody. My name is Dan Carey. I represent Easthampton in the House of Representatives. And the fact that my absent-mindedness caused me not to have a citation with me here today. It doesn't mean the House of Representatives doesn't support this project. They absolutely do, and the citation's coming. And further proof of it, my good colleague and friend from Amherst, Rep. Mandy Dom, has come to visit us and join us here today. So,
Thank you.
We're very, very excited on behalf of the House to welcome you to Easthampton to celebrate 18 years. 18 years, and you said it so perfectly in that video. It's not good news that it keeps getting bigger and bigger, but it's good news for those families, for the people who are using it, and it's great news for Easthampton that there's this physical space here where we can gather, especially coming out of the pandemic. It's so good to see people shoulder to shoulder, smiling, laughing, enjoying each other's company, doing this important, hopeful work that unfortunately doesn't need to happen. I got introduced to Learn to Cope through Marcy Julian, through D.A. Sullivan. I worked for 6 years at the district attorney's office. And at some point during that 6 years, he decided he wanted to start a drug diversion and treatment program. And so Dave had to step out to another event, but let me tell you how Dave operates. He says, I got this great idea, you. So I was in charge of the drug diversion and treatment program. So I went across the Commonwealth. I immersed myself in every recovery program I could, every court program I could, every human services program I could. And one of those, Dave gave me a little rectangle flyer and said, Learn to Cope is great. Learn about it. Go. So I'm on the phone with Marcy. Next thing I know, I'm sitting down at a meeting at Greenfield Community College. And some of these experiences I had just diving into the deep end of the recovery world, not being from that world, were a little uncomfortable at times. Sitting down at that meeting with those folks, I was immediately at ease, and it was so clear the benefit from the start, and especially by the end of that meeting, of Learn to Cope and what was happening in that little room in Greenfield and what was happening in those little rooms all across the Commonwealth. And so to have this permanent space here in Hampshire County, in my district, in my hometown, I'm excited about, but wherever it is, to know that those meetings are going to continue, to know that other people are going to have that experience that I had of being so warmly welcomed and learning so much is just so, so, so inspiring and hopeful. I loved what you said, whether you call it Easthampton or Hoopville or Hopeville or whatever it is. We're so glad that we've got that hope here because we need it. We need it in this world more day in and day out every day. So I don't want to go on 2 minutes, but I really want to welcome you to Easthampton. Thank you for being here. Thank you for the work you're doing, and I look forward to working with you all going forward.
This next lady is somebody that I met years ago, and she was working for an organization called Sphere. And Sphere was educating people on the effects of HIV and helping to train those of us in the field and others how we could help other people to avoid infection and to find resources they needed if they were already infected. She's continued to grow in her efforts to heal our community. And I'm so grateful that you're here today. Would you please help me welcome Mindy Dawn?
I feel unbelievably blessed to be with everybody today. And I don't usually use that word because when other people use it, I'm not always sure what they mean. But I really feel like it's mixed feelings because on the one hand, the need continues. And that's not our fault. It's how we respond to the need that we're really responsible for. But I also feel incredibly grateful. Thank you for bringing it to Western Massachusetts. Bringing it to the Commonwealth. It said created 2004, and I'm like, I think that's what you're showing. We were younger, maybe a little more energetic, but still we're there. Thank you so much. I really, a visionary. The first time I met Joanne was in a support group outside of Taunton, I think, and we were talking about how to respond to unintentional opioid overdose. and parents were incredibly generous with me, with their stories and their experiences. I couldn't keep up with that generosity, I could only try. But I do want to talk a little bit about stigma, and I want to talk about not only the way that you all help each other, but the way you help us as legislators. Now that I'm in this position, your stories fuel our work. Your advocacy breaks down not just the stigma, but any kind of complacency that may happen in the State House. And so I know that's not your primary role, but I want you to know that by sharing your story, you make a difference not only in the one-on-one, but you're making a difference in the whole state. And Massachusetts likes to think of itself as a leader, so figure that that's also making a difference in the whole world. Peter, our paths have crossed many times, and I'm thrilled that they're now going to cross in this situation. Obviously, Easthampton is incredibly well represented by these two gentlemen. I just want to give them. And hopefully Learn to Cope knows that you have an entire Western Mass delegation that's behind you. I'm really grateful for your work, for your engagement. It's really hard to acknowledge that you have a family member in trouble. It's really hard to shake off the responsibility that you may feel in that moment that may sort of prevent you from doing anything, to be able to take care of yourself. And I want you to know that when I talk about your advocacy affecting us at the State House, it's not just on the global issues. It's also on the issues of what you need as family members. And so you don't have to necessarily think about, well, what would that agenda be? Sharing your story helps us identify what those needs might be. And we can work with you to figure that out. So thank you so much. I'm so happy that I have a referral for Learn to Cope that's in the region. When we give referrals to constituents and residents, sometimes we don't know where that will go. But I know that when I'm going to tell a constituent there's a Learn to Cope chapter in Easthampton, you should check it out, I know they're going to come back and say thank you. So on their behalf, in anticipation of hearing that gratitude, I just really want to thank you so much. And whatever I can do.
I used to work for the Sheriff's Department down in Hampden County, and I was a proponent of making sure that Narcan was available 24 hours a day to all staff. Because the funny thing was, before that, if somebody, and let's be honest, there's drugs in jail. And if somebody were to overdose behind the wall, as we say, or behind the shrubs, typically it would be fine. The nursing staff could administer Narcan as long as they were thought out well enough to overdose between the hours of 8 and 4 Monday through Friday. That never happened. So I fought really hard to be able to get Narcan available for all of our officers. So along with the head of our medical department and the head of counseling, we took a trip to the State House for a particular hearing. And there was this mom there who thought that families should have access to Narcan, who thought that she and her friends should be able to train people on the use of Narcan and provide it for them. Hundreds of lives have been saved by the Narcan that Joanne Peterson fought for us to have. At that point, I was so impressed with this woman. I met her one other time when Marcy brought her and Chris Herron to Springfield for the kickoff, and Marcy introduced me to Joanne. And as my wife and I turned and walked away, I turned to my wife and said, I'm going to work for that woman someday. I'm so grateful that one of my very best friends, my greatest mentor ever, sorry, and the founder and executive director of Learn to Cope is Ms. Joanne Peterson. Please help me welcome.
Thank you. I have a request. I want to take a selfie with you all. Everybody say hey! I'm trying not to cry. So, how good does it feel to be standing here in nice clothes, not sweatpants? I normally don't like to write things down, but I did do that for this because I wanted to make sure that I make sure that everything I needed to say is said, and I didn't want to think back later and say, oh, I forgot. So here goes. I usually cry on paper and it melts down. Hopefully that won't happen today. So today is a day that will be etched in my memory as a day just as important as May 5th, 2004, 18 years ago, when a room was filled with desperate parents and family members, myself included, and we all were desperate and we just needed help. We were at the stage of hopelessness, budget cuts were making it impossible to get treatment beds. We were lucky if we got 3 to 4 days where there would be relapse, and then you'd have to go back on the phone for another 4 days to get a bed. No one knew how to recognize an overdose, much less how to save a life. The words and acronyms did not exist back then, and there was no talk about continuum of care, and resources were scarce. Although we had Mindy, who taught us so much after I met her. Learn to Cope was born on that night, on May 5th. And I'd like to acknowledge a person here that was with us then, and that's Mary Germano. Mary is more like a sister to me, but she's also a forever member of the Learn to Cope team. And she is now and has been our website coordinator. And every single day, she's on that website answering emails and approving new registrations. So she's still very much a huge part of Learn to Cope. Thank you for keeping me standing over all these years and helping me through many hurdles in the support and steadfast sisterhood. Because without you, I don't know if we would have been able to get to where we have gotten. There are so many people to thank here for the support of Learn to Cope. DPH is here. Brian, Jenny, thank you so much. But without DPH's funding, and without the fact that they respect and listen to us and acknowledge our program as a worthy program for families that makes a difference in people's lives, we'll forever be grateful for that. Because I know that someday when I move on, Learn to Cope will stay. Marcy Julian. I'm going to cry again. The pioneer of Learn to Cope's presence in Western Massachusetts, and my friend forever. Thank you for starting Holyoke, Pittsfield, and Greenfield. Teaching me the map. Marcy always held up the map. This is I-91. I ended up driving almost to New York to try to get home one day. The scenery's so pretty this way. I don't remember this up right here. Long way on the map. Right. It's Albany. Marcy spent many, many years speaking, doing education, educating the public on the family's perspective as a volunteer and then as a valued Learn to Cope staff and team member. An awesome team member. Marcy brought Peter. Yes. Marcy brought Peter. I remember visiting Peter at the Sheriff's Department and watching one of his workshops, and I was just blown away by it. And I sat in the audience with incarcerated women, and they loved him. And he just had everyone laughing and just joking, and he just, you could tell that he gave them a day with some smiles. And that day I was thinking, I was so happy to have met Peter and just so lucky that he's a part of Learn to Cope. I'd also like to recognize some of our Learn to Cope team members who made the trip here today. Carrie Walsh, who is Carrie handles so much from A to Z, I can't even tell you. She's always on the other end of the phone, just helping everybody. It was a huge help, I know, to Peter and Magda and Kathy for getting everything set up here. Eileen Rule, our program director, who made Patty Conant, who is our regional manager. And she's Resource Patty, by the way. We call her Patty Resource. I don't see Linda. She's not here. There's 16 of us. So, oh, where is she? Linda! Oh, Linda's here. Linda Rosenberg. She handles, she's the regional manager. Thank you, Linda. And she's also works up really hard with Carrie and Kim, who's not here, on the beautiful brochures. And, you know, a lot of the things that you see that go around. It's pretty amazing. I'm not sure if Lisa Donahue made it here, but she's from the Cape. I don't think she's here. Doris is here. Doris, longtime member, volunteer. Now she's also retired from her other job and is now a part of Learn to Cope, and she's our family outreach for the Cape in Falmouth. She's making huge headway there already. She's great, working along with Lisa and Kim. Kathy Day, who's actually Kathy Day, but we call her K Day. I have nicknames for everybody. I haven't found one yet for Kathy Aramo, but I'm working on it. So Learn to Cope is a team effort. There's 16 of us, all with unique special skills, and combined together make a pretty amazing program. Magda and Kathy and Peter, I'm so grateful for what you've done here. It is just amazing. I've been emotional. Thank you for being you, Peter. For the compassion you have for families affected by substance use, for the passion and creative talent you share, and for building and creating Learn to Cope West along with Magda and Kathy. I'll never forget the day during COVID that it was the shutdown. We're all trying to struggle like everybody else, working from home. You know, I had my one-on-one meeting with Peter, and he got his new puppy, the most beautiful Australian Shepherd, Chino, who looks like a chocolate chip cookie. So Peter and Chino came all the way down to Massasoit State Park, not Miles Standish, and we went for a walk. And other than the fact that I almost strangled the poor puppy to death when he jumped off a little bridge, luckily that didn't happen, but we had a really nice walk. And I'll never forget it, because during that walk, I said, well, where do you see yourself in the future? What do you think you'd like to do? And he's like, oh, well, I have this kind of crazy dream, you know, maybe building like a big program in Western Mass, and, you know, like a family center, which we've talked about over the years. Even years ago, we tried one in Brockton, and it just didn't work. And I said, let's do it. And he's like, what? Let's do it. It was perfect timing. COVID's a terrible thing. But because of the shutdown, there was a lot of funding we weren't able to spend. We had the time. And then Peter got right to work and found the resources. I think that was November? December, when we took that walk. By February, we were in this room signing the lease. It hasn't even been a year, and look at what you've created. He has partnered with many other programs. I won't go into all of it because there's so much. But one of my proudest moments was just about a week ago when Kathy posted on the Learn to Cope West Facebook pictures of a big training going on in here with, you know, the big square table, and you see police officers and community members. And I'm like, oh my God, it's working. It's happening. And I just think back to 18 years ago when we were all sitting in that little room and not one of us knew that the power of families' voices can literally make something happen with next to nothing. For years we had zero funding and we drove all over the place anyway. We made copies on copy machines and gave them out to people. We had our everything in the trunks. But like I said earlier, families are somebody that is just such an important piece to the puzzle, because we're the ones that go home and have to live 24 hours a day sober to try to figure out how to help someone who's not. I have one last thing I want to say, and I met Connie and talked to Connie a little while ago, and I had to mention this because I just got so emotional when she, said this to me. But we had a nice hug, and she said, "Learn to Cope is my garden." And I go to Learn to Cope, and each person in that meeting is a different flower. And Learn to Cope has really helped her, and she said that she's able to do so much more for herself and her loved ones because of the meetings she attends out here in Western Mass. And honestly, that's exactly what we're here for, to help each other survive. No matter what happens in our lives, we survive. So thank you, Peter, Kathy, Magda. It's just unbelievable. We have a bilingual group that Magda handles. We've got Kathy sitting up here that helps people that come in from the street and has such a warm, just genuine thing. I mean, when you saw her in the video, she found her home, and it's just true. And thank you, Peter. My only regret is Chino is not here. But thank you so much, everybody, for coming, for the citations, and just for the love for Learn to Cope. And I hope I get to see you more often.
So for those of you who haven't had the extreme pleasure, this is Magda Colon. It's kind of like Hair Club for men. We're members too. So at this point of our program, so this would be when we would typically cut the ribbon, right? But ribbons are not delicious. So we're going to cut a cake because it's much more delicious. We've got one more piece of the program before we finish. Don't go anywhere. Before we do this, I wonder if the members of Learn to Cope that are here today have taken time to drive from all over Western Mass. Would you mind raising your hands? I was at an event, and as I was cleaning up and packing up to leave, I heard two young guys who were also at the event. Resource fairs are kind of like the traveling circus. It's all us, the same presenters at each table, moving around. I was packing up my stuff, and I heard two young guys, and one of them turned to the other and said, "Oh, look, there's that," I'll clean it up a little bit, "there's that effing love guy." So I got that tonight. But I'll take that anytime. And I just want to tell my family, the Western Mass members, I love you. to me, if you're going to have a party, you need some tremendous music. Our next guest is somebody who I heard describe himself as being brought up behind the tofu curtain here in Western Mass. He's a gentleman who is Grammy nominated. He's literally traveled the entire world as a performer, as a songwriter, and as an ambassador, teaching our music to people from other countries and collaborating with people from other countries. Seth just got back from Anchorage, and he's made the trip out here to see us, to perform one of his songs for us. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my extreme honor and pleasure to introduce you to my friend, your friend too. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Seth Gleaver.
I've known Peter for a number of years, and he sent me a text a couple weeks ago asking me to play a song. I texted him back a different song, and then in the last 40 minutes I've decided to do neither one of those. Come sit by the fire, I'll tell you the tale about a young sailor I know. He isn't so tall, stubborn is all. Into the ocean he rode. Water was cold when it broke on his deck. The mighty wind tore through his sail. Was it courage he faked when he felt the bow shake? Was he too afraid to feel scared? Some waves approach, storm in the ocean, waves he cannot control. But a sailor's deed is not calming the sea. It's facing what he doesn't know. That's how he learned to build a better boat. Debris washed to the shore. He fixed a new plan of attack. He gathered supplies while he studied the tide. Had a launch with the wind at your back. He's always approach, storm in the ocean, waves he cannot control. But a sailor's deed is not calming the sea. It's facing he doesn't know. That's how he learned to build a better boat. Every day we dream of going beyond the break. But it's not the weather, as it's how we weather the change. Approach, storm in the ocean, waves we cannot control. But a sailor's deed is not calming the sea. It's facing what he doesn't know. That's how he learned. That's how he learned. That's how he learned. Build a better boat. To build a better boat.
Before we conclude the program, I just want to bring attention to somebody I admire a great deal. Can you imagine trying to get this whole recovery thing and being totally deaf? Not being able to hear, what everybody's telling you you should do, what you're supposed to do, trying to guide you. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine speaking a language other than English and being here in Western Mass trying to get services? That in itself is daunting. But to be a deaf person and try to get that is nearly impossible. I'm really grateful that Lisa is here as an ASL interpreter who's interpreting for two amazing people who are deaf recovery coaches. Massachusetts has a team of deaf recovery coaches. Karen Larson, who is here, is the head of that team. This is all about connection. If you know people who can benefit from that connection or many of the other connections, we've got providers here, we've got politicians. Can you believe I have politicians? Yes, Your Honor. Politicians here who are fighting for us, not against us. Did that sound a little political? But I appreciate that. Just some wonderful friends. Please, introduce yourselves to one another. Make those connections. Eat this food. Thank you, everybody, for being here. So today has been so tremendously exciting for those of us in Learn to Cope. So this is our grand opening, our birthday, if you will. We refer to Learn to Cope as Hopeville. The room is filled with friends and family and supporters and providers, all of whom are excited to bring services, resources, self-care to the people who love people with substance use disorder. I'm thrilled about the turnout. I'm thrilled about how many people are behind us on this journey. It's just been a wonderful, wonderful day. Thank you.